Do you ever want to dive deeper into the Bible, but you just don't know where to begin, or struggle to feel like you even have the time? When you read the Bible, do you get frustrated because you know there's so much more in there? You just have no clue how to get it out? Or maybe you want to know the Bible better, and you're looking for any resource to help. Then this is the podcast for you. Welcome to the Context and Color of the Bible. We're sisters. I'm Veronica.
I'm Erika.
And we love to study the Bible, and we love to help others understand it better. When it comes to our own study of Scripture, we have found that in bringing back the context of Scripture, it adds so much to our understanding. It actually adds color to the black and white pages of the text. So I want to do a quick shout out before we get started to Caroline and Rosie and Marianne.
Hello.
They're in Texas, and they've talked to me about a few of the episodes they've listened to. But just it's always fun to go, oh, new listeners.
Right. Welcome.
Yes. So, but with that, we are in Judges chapter 2 today.
Mm-hmm.
Judges chapter 1 and chapter 2 are both an introduction.
Yes.
Judges 1 is political. I think that's what you said last week, where Judges chapter 2 is the spiritual.
Yes.
Is that what you said? Okay. I don't have any notes from last week, so I'm going off of my memory.
Good memory.
But basically, we're going to look at setting up Judges again, but from a different standpoint.
Right. Judges chapter 1 gives you the surface level view of what's happening to Israel as we see them starting to go downhill. Judges chapter 2 pulls back that surface layer and says, now we're going to look at the spiritual. We're going to look at the underneath, the why this is happening. And right away in Judges chapter 2, we get a different feeling because in Judges chapter 1, the tribes go up to speak to the Lord. Mm-hmm. Well, now an angel of the Lord goes up to speak to the tribes. And it's not positive. It's a very negative, you guys are massively screwing up. But we have to keep a couple things in mind. First of all, God has already in Exodus and Deuteronomy commanded Israel, don't make covenants with the Canaanites. Mm-hmm. Number 2, when you enter the land, destroy their places of worship, because who knows what terrible things are happening there. And so God has made it very obvious. Once you're on the land, this is how I expect you to live. And also, one commentary put it this way, which I loved. Israel has had the privilege of being benefactors of divine kindness. So it's this idea that God has so been gracious and merciful as they've been traveling from Egypt through the wilderness. Now that they're finally on the land, it's their turn to turn around and respond to God's faithfulness with faithfulness of their own. His faith is to bring about our faith, his faithfulness to our faithfulness. But instead, what we see is the tool that God has chosen to use to bless the world is rebelling.
The tool as in Israel.
Israel, yes.
Okay. Picture Israel as a tool.
Yes. Remember, this is bigger than just Israel. God's plan from day one has been to redeem all of creation, reclaim all the nations, and he's chosen to do that through Israel. And Israel's to be that light drawing the nations towards God, and they're not doing that. So God has to discipline his people. We learned right away in Judges chapter 2, when that angel of the Lord goes up, he's like, listen, let me tell you what's going on. You're entering into covenant with them, and you're not destroying their places of worship. You are disobeying completely what God has said. So God has to discipline his people. Number 1, because he's righteous, which means he's going to act faithful according to what he said. And number 2, he has to bring Israel back into obedience so they can be that light to the nations. This is bigger than just God and Israel's relationship. So he has to discipline them, and he acknowledges through the angel of the Lord, I'm not going to get rid of the Canaanites. They're now going to live in the land with you, and they're going to make it really hard. I was going to make this place heaven on earth. I was going to bless the socks off of you guys. But you've chosen to live in disobedience, and this is the consequence. You get an even more broken, fallen world. I was going to undo some of that curse. Now I'm going to let it play itself out fully and completely. And Israel responds with weeping and sacrificing. Like they're horrified. Oh, we're so sorry. But they don't respond by obedience and destroying the places of worship.
Oh, I'm sorry I did it, but not sorry enough to go back and do what I was supposed to do.
Right.
Yeah, if I'm thinking of my kids, if I told them to do something and they just, sorry I didn't do it, and then kept doing whatever they wanted.
Right.
Yeah, you're not sorry enough.
Right. Like, yeah, you may feel bad. Man, I really feel bad, but I don't feel bad enough to change my behavior and obey. So that's just verses 1 through 6. And then I think, let me look real fast. Yeah. And then verse 6 and 7 go back to Joshua's death. And again, the narrator's taking us back in time. We're watching Joshua die again because he's trying to make it explicit. This is our second introduction. We need to start over, peel back that layer, and add some more details to carry us through the book. We're then introduced to that cycle that we're going to watch unfold over and over again in the heart of the book. Israel rebels. God graciously intervenes, raises up a deliverer. Israel is saved, and then they go back into sinning. But remember, this isn't a circle. This is water going down a drain. Each cycle takes us at least one, if not several steps closer to the bottom where Israel can just be flushed and like, they're gone. Number 2, we actually learn this started under Joshua. Some of this rebellion. That's why Joshua wasn't even able to drive out all the Canaanites. There were already some who were not remaining faithful to the covenant. And now that unfaithfulness is growing. It's like a cancer, a sickness that's spreading. And again, they're sorry, but not fully sorry. One commentary put it this way: what seemed to be a screaming locomotive heading for Israel's destruction is suddenly derailed. Israel seems to be heading towards the brink of destruction through this entire book. But every time, God in his mercy intervenes. So we learn about this cycle. We learn about history. We also get to learn about God through the book because, well, actually, I'll have you read it. Okay. Verse 14, Judges chapter 2, verse 14.
So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he gave them over to their plunderers who plundered them. And he sold them into the hand of their surrounding enemies so that they could no longer withstand their enemies.
In the Hebrew, they phrase it this way: his nose burned.
Which is a funny picture.
Like a bright red. When I think of bright red nose, I think of cold.
Yeah.
But picture for us, it would be like those cartoon characters with someone whose face is bright red and steam is steaming out of their ears. Like,
or they blow their top.
Yes. Like they're furious. And on the one hand, God is passionate and cannot sit idle while his people prostrate themselves to things that aren't God. If you're a Star Trek fan, God is not like Spock.
Okay.
And we tend to think of God very logical and somber and emotionless.
In control. Not even necessarily emotionless, but just very much in control of.
Yes.
You don't see extremes.
Yes.
You know? Oh, I enjoy it's the light, easy.
But not even do we picture God smiling?
I do.
But I wonder if other people do. I do now.
Okay.
But I think my view of God very much without realizing it was a very serious God who just is untouchable.
Right.
And the God you see in scripture is actually a God who's very passionate and he is in control. And that's the crazy thing. God has emotion and he feels greatly. Whatever emotion it is.
I guess flat would have been a better word.
Yeah,
God
flat.
feels very flat.
Yes. Yes, that I really like. That's so true.
So there's emotion there, but they're just flat emotions.
Yes. Yeah.
So you're kind of bringing in some swings
Yes.
into this pendulum. It's not the flat middle. It's the...
No. Whatever he feels greatly. But the thing, unlike us, in his emotion is never wrong.
Right.
And it's never unrighteous. God's anger is never a sinful response, and it's never God losing control.
Like I do.
I do.
I lose when I'm angry, normally my children.
Right.
I lose control.
Yes.
Not to the point that I beat my children, but I know I'm out of
Every
control.
mother understands, anybody who's dealt with kids understands what it's like to lose control. And you don't have to say or do anything. You're just,
right.
Yes, that's never God. He feels anger and great anger, but it is always under control, and it is always just and appropriate and right. This is stuff that should make you angry. God's emotions, whatever he feels. So if God can feel anger like that, God can feel joy like that and love like that. Whatever God is feeling, his emotions are always correct, appropriate. He never overreacts. So when God is shown as angry, that is the best and most perfect response to what is happening. But in the book of Judges, we also see a God that is moved to pity and compassion. In the darkness of Judges, there shines a God whose mercy, grace, and compassion is amazing because of his chesed. This book is full of the chesed of God, that loyal, loving kindness that will not give up on his people. So even though his anger is justified and he does respond with discipline, it never has the last word. God's faithfulness, God's compassion and mercy does, because he's a God of chesed.
Which we have a whole podcast on that word.
Right.
And I'll have to go look it up to find out, because that is a huge word. But I like that's the end of everything.
Right.
Whatever emotion, and truthfully, when I discipline my children and when I've blown it and gotten out of control, I do go back and apologize. And because I want that fellowship, that relationship restored. And so you can't just have God leaving it off angry. You want him to come back and go, okay, normally we have to go to him and go, let's make it right. But then he'll come back, or he'll be there. Not that he comes back. He'll be there waiting for us. And that's the response we're going to get. Right. We're not going to get that anger. We're going to get that hesed. So you need to know hesed. So I'll put that in the show notes of which episode it is.
Yes. I think just even the idea, as a parent, our children do things that legitimately make us angry. And there is a break in the relationship. And sometimes I love my child and I forgive them, but they need to really restore the relationship. You need to see this was wrong.
Yes.
And I think that's what God is desperately trying to do with Israel. You need to see this is wrong. This is destroying you. I was just talking to a friend the other day, and she became a believer later in life. And so she clearly understands and remembers what it was like to live without God. And so she has a deep desire to reach everyone with the gospel, because she's like, I know what they're going through. I remember that heartache, that sorrow. You are looking for anything to help you. She goes, but they look at anything but God. You don't want God. And I think that's what God is desperately trying to call us back from. I know you're looking at all these what things seem to be fun, and the end they lead to death and destruction. And I have to discipline you, let you hit rock bottom to get you to finally look up and say, God, I need you. And that is what he's doing to Israel. So that's what we already are learning in Judges chapter 2. But now I'm going to change it to a couple take away life lessons from that, first of all, one commentary put it this way: faith and the knowledge of God are always only one generation of extinction, one generation away from extinction. The traditions of faith require constant attention, teaching, discussing, and living out day by day if they are to have a chance to be passed on to the next generation. So in other words, Veronica, we can't sit back and relax and just think like, I've got this. I know how to walk with God. My kids know how to walk with God. My nieces and nephew, my Sunday school class, whatever. It's all good. However, God has given us influence in the next generation, be it through kids, grandkids, nieces and nephews, Bible studies, youth groups, whatever, even just kids you see at church. It is your responsibility to wisely pass on the faithfulness of God, which is to bring about faithfulness in the believer. And we're to pass on even the urgency that the next generation realizes they need to teach it to the next generation after that. So not only do we teach them about God, we have to teach them to teach others about God, which is one reason we're doing this podcast to help families. How do we talk about some of these hard books? How do we explain them to our kids? You know what? Sit down and listen to podcasts together and talk about it. Or you listen and then take your kids through the book. But I thought about this as I was thinking about this, Veronica. It hit me how we were raised. And I've actually told this to people. God was real to my parents. And so God became real to me. I can remember waking up in high school to get ready for school and seeing mom on the couch doing her devotions. I can remember coming home from school, and if dad wasn't at work, he'd be at the table studying the Bible. We talked about the Bible. I mean, we were far from perfect, totally, but God was real. He influenced what we watched on TV, how we talked, how we interacted as a family. The clothes we wore. It was a daily part of our life. Our mom made sure we were in the Bible daily. And she would ask us questions about it.
She actually started writing Bible studies for us. Maybe not you.
Not me.
I forgot.
No.
Mom only did it for me.
She did it for you. And then I think she's like, I'm done.
I know. But mom did it. So I took that and I started writing Bible studies
for your kids.
For my children. But now I've taken that and I've turned it into actual Bible studies, Proverbs and Leviticus right now.
Right.
For other people, because mom just went and bought you...
I got devotionals.
Yes,
from other people.
I got mom.
Yeah. Spoiled.
Yes.
Yeah. So you never know what God's going to do. But I think as parents, sometimes we can get so wrapped up in how do I pass this on to my kids? And you know what? Just live it out yourself. That is not a guarantee that your kids will 100% love the Lord and walk with him. There is no guarantee in this world. But they will have a better chance. Yes. If God is real to you and you bring him home, your kids will see that. And even if they're not walking with him, I can guarantee you they will remember it. And there will be seeds planted. So just walk with God as a mom, as a dad, as an aunt. Maybe you're the only God that your nieces and nephews will see. You walk faithful and you bring God with you when you go to their house or have them to your house. They will see it. Also, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Veronica.
I'm good.
A second lesson, which I thought this was interesting. The commentaries point out that Judges doesn't really describe or give a lot of detailed info about the idolatry and the idols, the false gods, and what they were like. And that is very intentional because then it allows the reader to wrestle with what idols are in my life. One commentary put it this way: the old gods, as in those idols, are still with us. They have simply changed their clothes so that they merge more easily into the modern crowd. They still claim to provide meaning to life, explain the universe, provide the basis for personal security. They still demand wholehearted commitment from their worshipers. So as we go through the book of Judges, one thing I think the narrator is trying to do is to get the reader to ask, what idols are in your life? What are you trusting to provide meaning to life? What are you looking at to give you that assurance that tomorrow everything's going to be okay, no matter what, because I have this.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the book of Judges for us. What's pulling away my allegiance to God?
But I also like it because it's also like, I was thinking of, God doesn't waste ink.
Right.
You know what they looked like, what exactly they did, it doesn't matter.
Right.
They weren't real. They didn't serve a purpose. So you don't need to know a lot. You just need to know it's there, because in each generation, in each society, in each culture, it does look different. So if the Bible is going to be truth that transcends time, their idols, I mean, we would look at it and go, that's dumb. We understand how rain comes. It has nothing to do with an idol. It's the water cycle. But we have things now that can become an idol, whether it's TV. And that's not something God could have talked about. Screen time.
Right. Yes. So true. Chocolate.
So instead of, God is so wise in the vagueness of it, the details are not what's important. What's important is the truth behind it. So it does transcend time, and it does become, as you're thinking about this, you can think of bank accounts, stock accounts, children, or your image, or your job, or your
health food.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, today, health, I'm not
stepping on toes.
Yes.
No, but to be
right.
non-toxic, organic, all of that those
right.
are fine. Those are good.
Right.
We're not saying
don't do those
can
things.
It be an idol that it's all consuming? That's the only thing I can think about. And it's like, you know what? Ultimately, God, you're in control. I can eat super healthy, and bad things can still happen.
I had a period, I don't know if I ever shared this with you, years ago, before you moved into town, where I was sure I was going to die young.
I thought that when you were in 6th grade.
Really?
Yeah, because in 5th grade, 4th grade, you always had strep throat.
I had pneumonia in 4th grade.
Yeah, I just always thought, oh, she's weak. She's weak. She's not going to make it. You always had strep throat.
That's
you were weak.
Yeah, strep throat means you're weak.
Just so you know.
Sorry. Apologize for laughing straight into the mic. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
No, I never. Here I am. I'm 44, in case you're wondering. I've made it a little bit longer. No, that's so funny. So I thought a few years ago I was going to die young and leave my husband, my young, good-looking husband and growing children, and he was going to marry some other woman, and they were all going to forget about me. And it was over, and it was starting to take over my thoughts.
Oh, I do remember this.
Okay, so I did tell you, and I was getting angry at my husband. How dare you?
He did.
Yes, and he was like, Erika, you're not even sick. Chill, woman. You're fine. And I had to 30 days pray through, I think it was Psalm 30, maybe. I don't know. I'll have to look up the verse.
Okay.
And it was all about my life is in the hand of God. And there was a part of the verse that says, but God. And I had to go, okay, Lord, I don't know whether in life or in death, I belong to you.
Right. And that's not a guarantee you were going to live forever.
And it wasn't, but it totally changed my thoughts for 30 days to meditate on this verse. And now it's going to drive me crazy. I have to go find it. And you can put it in the show notes, I guess. And it was but God, no matter what happens, you hold my life, you hold my kids. That's where my confidence has to be. And I had to forgive my husband
for marrying
a different woman in my imaginary future. So yeah,
that's funny.
We all have idols and fears.
Yeah.
We struggle with. So that's
Judges.
That's Judges. So come back next week.
That really is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now we're going to dive into the heart of the story. We're going to meet the judges. We're going to judge the judges, as my husband puts it.
How many judges are there?
12.
Okay. And do they each get one chapter?
Well, I can't tell you.
Okay, so but that's even something to look at is how much
screen time each one gets.
Time they get.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I feel like as we get long, here's what I'm going to make a prediction. As we go, they get longer and more screen time. So we'll see if I'm right. But thanks for joining us. If you do want to know, Erika hasn't had strep throat in a long, long time.
I got my tonsils removed. So,
and she survived. But don't forget, you can jump on social media. That is where I put maybe a fun picture of Erika when she was younger. Maybe I'll find a nasty picture of you with strep throat.
Yeah, thanks.
But that's how you can interact with us, whether it's social media, Instagram, Facebook, our website. As always, we do have a newsletter, which is the easiest way to stay in touch and communication with us. But if you heard something today, hopefully you were encouraged. Go share this with somebody. Find that group and go, let's study Judges together, whether they're your age, whether they're older, whether they're younger, because we are always trying to get the word out there. Yes, pass this on to the next generation, because that's the only way this continues to grow and God's kingdom continues to grow. So thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye-bye.